This tutorial will help you complete the checklist for teacher or adult sponsor Form 1. Please have your student complete the top portion for student name. Please have the student type in their project title. Moving down to the numbered lines. All of the students should be ticking off number 1, which indicates that the student and hopefully teacher have both reviewed the MSSEF and ISEF rules and guidelines. Everyone should be checking off box 2, indicating that you reviewed the student's completed student checklist 1, which is Form 1A, and that the student has submitted a research plan. Number 3, everyone should be ticking off, indicating you've worked with the student and that you've discussed all the possible risks involved in the project. Number 4 is asking if the project involves one or more of the following and requires prior approval by an SRC, IRB, IACUC, or IBC board. If the student's project does use humans for any purpose, usually for surveys or human subjects, then please tick here. If the student is working at all with a vertebrate animal in any way, please tick here. It's better to tick this box off and submit the forms for prior approval and err on the side of caution. This section here is for potentially hazardous biological agents. If a student works with microorganisms, rDNA, tissues, or any cells of any kind, please tick through here and please submit for prior approval. Again, it's better to put the paperwork in too early and find out that you've been too cautious than to find out late in the game that you haven't been cautious enough. Number 5 is asking if you've completed all the project forms that must go with every project. Every student's project needs the teacher adult sponsor checklist Form 1. That happens to be this form. It also needs a research plan, even though you've ticked off in number 2 that the student has a research plan. Same thing, student checklist 1A must be completed, as well as approval form 1B. If the student has worked in a regulated research institutional or industrial setting, then the student needs to submit form 1C. If the student is working on a project they started last year and it's a continuation, then they need the form 7. Dropping down to number 6. If a student is using any of the topics listed under number 4, humans, vertebrate animals, or potentially hazardous biological agents, by ticking one of these boxes, you're triggering additional forms down here in number 6. So let's begin with a student who might be using humans. A student will need the human participant form, number 4, or the appropriate institutional IRB documentation. The student will need the informed consent form and a qualified scientist form when applicable. If a student's using vertebrate animals, the student will need form 5A. If the project has been conducted at school, home, or field research. If it's been done in a regulated research institution with vertebrate animals, then you need the 5B. And you'll need this IACUC approval, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. You'll also need the Form 2, which is Qualified Scientist. If the student's using potentially hazardous biological agents, they have to have the Form 6A, the 6B, the Qualified Scientist Form 2, and a Risk Assessment Form 3. Lastly, if a student's just using hazardous chemicals, activities, and devices, then the student would need Risk Assessment Form 3 and the Qualified Scientist Form if applicable. Lastly, at the bottom, you will put down the teacher's or adult sponsor's name, teacher signature, date of review, teacher's phone number, again, BPS phone number, teacher's email, and please use the BPS email. And this would then be completed.